Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Cobern, and today's episode is the Oakland Raiders draft class. Starting with the first pick of the draft, Gareon Conley, cornerback out of Ohio State. Now, the first issue with him is with production, and I don't normally like to start out with issues, but this is just the thing. He had 38.58 in terms of solo tackle market share, 53.24 in terms of pass deflection market share. And based on all the data that I've collected since the 1989 NFL draft class, there has not been any multiple All-Pro cornerbacks to have less than 77 when it comes to their pass deflection market share. And the vast majority of multiple Pro Bowl cornerbacks had at least 77 when it came to their pass deflection market share as well. So Conley fails the Pro Bowl level and the All-Pro level when it comes to that threshold with pass deflection market share. And solo tackle market share is not great. It could be better. You know, below average is not something that you necessarily want. You can get away with it if you have really, really high pass deflection market share, but he doesn't have really high pass deflection market share. And overall production, he had 59.03, which is just his production score when you take into account his level of competition, his age, and other factors like that. He scored 59 out of 100. Which is just not getting it done for quality outcomes. Again, Pro Bowl, All-Pro outcomes. The positives, though, I mean, athleticism-wise, he's 82.22 in terms of explosiveness, 75.96 in terms of speed, and 86.94 when it comes to flexibility for his size. Conley has a lot of positives when it comes to his athleticism, which is probably why the Raiders liked him, possibly, and some film reasons. But I think another reason why they really like him is his similarities between Conley and Sean Smith. This is just him and Conley compared to each other when it comes to their athleticism, their production, just look. There's so many similarities. The only difference is really Conley is more athletic, and Conley is shorter than Sean Smith, and arm length is a little bit higher with Sean Smith, but all these guys are, both Sean Smith and Conley are guys that have length. They're guys whose production was kind of and I think this is pretty much the type of career arc I would expect out of Conley. A little better than Sean Smith, of course, because I think athleticism-wise he does have that. But I just don't think that this guy is ever going to become a multiple Pro Bowl player or a multiple All-Pro player because he just doesn't have the production from college to match those accolades, going all the way back to as far back as he's already gone. So that's just my big issues with the Conley pick. And I think they could have done better. There was other cornerbacks there. Kevin King is one of those guys who had better production markers overall and better age markers overall that could have been a better pick in terms of quality outcomes. So I'm disappointed, to say the least, that the Raiders would decide to make this choice. Then we come to the next pick, Obi Melifonwu, defensive safety out of UConn. Lots of people have been praising this pick as the steal of the draft. But these are people that only pay attention to athleticism and don't pay attention to production and definitely don't pay attention to film. Obi Melifonwu is really, really raw on film. And just to kind of explain some of these issues, production-wise, he was 94.18 in terms of solo tackle market share, 36.18 in terms of interception market share, and 82.56 in terms of pass deflection market share. He misses quality outcomes with interception market share alone, but when you actually look at his production for his conference, for his schedule, when you look at schedule adjusted production, 68.95 is not getting it done when it comes to quality outcomes either. He's also older. He's 49.93 in terms of his age score, coming in at 23 years old, which is older than you want for a safety to come out. And the only real positives that you have to point to is that in terms of his explosiveness, he's 99.91 in terms of his explosiveness for his size, 98.17 in terms of speed, and 79.40 in terms of flexibility for his size. So, yeah, he's a very good athlete. He's the most explosive safety that there's ever been, athletically speaking, since as far back as this data goes. But the special outcomes, quality outcomes are just not existent with guys with his production profile and his age profile. So those two dings are things that, yes, Obi Melifonwu can become a starter for the Oakland Raiders. I think as a tackler he will be impressive, But I think when you look at the film where he's very raw, and you also look at the fact that on film he doesn't finish plays. The reason his interception market share is not that great is because he just doesn't finish the opportunities that he gets to get interceptions. So I just kind of worry about this pick. I think he can be a starter, definitely. I think he's going to be a starter. But I think that there's a lot of issues here when it comes to his overall projection because of his age and because of his production. So I feel like that's if he ends up being a starter, which I think is best case scenario, and I think that's the scenario that he'll end up being, I think that's great, but I definitely think you could have done better at that spot with other talent there and other safeties that are better, with better outcomes, better upside, better other sort of things like that. Then the next pick of the draft, another guy that's athletic, but the production doesn't match, Eddie Vanderdoes, defensive tackle out of UCLA. Starting with his athleticism, let's start with the positive here. He's 66.45 in terms of explosiveness, 81.84 in terms of speed, and 83.08 in terms of flexibility for his size. Above average in everything and near elite when it comes to speed and flexibility. That's great. But then you go to his production. In terms of his solo tackle market share production, he only had 63.57, and sack market share was 37.20, and tackle for loss market share was 42.78, and his overall production was 61.27 for his schedule that he faced. And UCLA faced a very, very tough schedule, but he just wasn't productive against that schedule. So, bottom line, the main thing I can really say about this pick is you got a defensive tackle that can be a starter. There have been numerous. See, this type of player comes up a lot, guys. It's a player that has good athleticism traits, that comes from a big-time school, but didn't produce in college. And a lot of these guys end up being starters. They end up being, that's the high end for them, is starters at the NFL level. But they're not guys that have high-quality outcomes. They're not all-pro players. They're not Pro Bowl players. And the fact is I can easily say this. If Eddie Vanderdoes becomes a multiple Pro Bowl player or a multiple All-Pro player, it will be unprecedented. It's never happened before. And this is based, again, on multiple draft class spanning decades. So bottom line is, I just don't think the Eddie Vanderdoes pick is going to be a pick that's going to lead to high-quality outcomes. But at the very least, you've got a guy who can become a starter for you. Then we come to the next pick of the draft, David Sharp, offensive tackle out of Florida. A guy that I've nicknamed the legally blind side because he's legally blind. I'm sorry, that's a bad joke. But in terms of athleticism, he's 15.77 in terms of explosiveness, 54.59 in terms of speed, and 73.91 when it comes to flexibility for his size. That's a problem, guys, especially the explosiveness. Again, 15.77 is not that great, and this is just him compared to other offensive tackles who were starters who had similar explosiveness. And the common theme that you're if you just think about this from a logical standpoint, when you have a guy who's that unexplosive for his size, he's going to be susceptible to edge rushers that have above average explosiveness. He just is, and that's something that was on film. That's something where anytime he faced a player who had marginally above average explosiveness, they were able to get the corner on him fairly easily. And doesn't matter how big he is, doesn't matter how much size he has, if you get beat off the jump, you lose. Matt Khalil is probably the best example of a guy that had 90-plus percentile speed, had 90-plus percentile flexibility for his size, but it doesn't matter how fast you are, it doesn't matter how flexible you are, if your opponent is more explosive than you are. So bottom line, the Sharp pick is a guy that I think could become a starting right tackle, but he's going to be a liability. And I think he's going to be a guy that your scheme has to fit around. And it makes sense why they would take this type of tackle, because they take this type of tackle a ton. These big, not explosive, but powerful tackles. They do this consistently, and it's good for the run game. It's okay for the run game, but when it comes to the passing game, when it comes to pass protection, and that's from that kind of sort of standpoint, you need an offense that's a quick passing offense that gets rid of the football as fast as possible, which is something Derek Carr and the Raiders have done, and that also explains the reasons why the Raiders had one of the lowest yards per attempt in the league last year, was because their offense had to get rid of the football very, very quickly because of how poor their tackle play was. this doesn't help that situation. It doesn't help the fact that, and again, when you're talking about making bigger plays down the field, bigger plays for Derek Carr to get, bigger throws down the field, 9 routes to Amari Cooper, whatever you want to call it, explosive plays that develop down the field are something that you're going to have less opportunities to get when your offensive tackles are as poor when it comes to explosiveness. So bottom line is David Sharp can be a potential starter, but I think this is a pick indicative of the issues that the Raiders have at the offensive tackle spot. It's the issues that the Green Bay Packers even have when it comes to their offensive tackle spot. The Vikings, multiple teams have this problem where they value traits that are good for the run game but are not good for the passing game, and you literally have to scheme around these problems, and then you end up in games where you can't scheme around these problems, and then your quarterback gets injured, and then you end up having to start Connor Cook in the playoffs. So it's not good. And then we get to the next pick. I'm sorry I went on a rant there, but I just had to. Markel Lee, linebacker out of Wake Forest. Starting out with the positives, production. You have 79.67 in terms of solo tackle market share. Age-wise, he scored a 97.17 in terms of his age, 93.52 in terms of his overall production for the schedule that he faced. All these are positive marks. Where Markel Lee falls apart is in terms of his athleticism. He only scored 32.23 in terms of explosiveness, 39.30 in terms of speed, and 42.19 when it comes to flexibility for his size. There has not been a single multiple All-Pro, multiple Pro Bowl linebacker to have as low of an explosion score as he's had, neither the speed score, neither the flexibility score. Best case scenario, you have a potential starter here. You have a guy that is productive. You have a guy who's proven to be at least a high-quality backup, is kind of where I think he's going to end up being. But bottom line is, production is great, but you have to have the athleticism to match the production. And this is something that people keep not getting it. You have to be good in everything. It can't just be all athleticism and all production or all age or all. You have to be good in every single metric to be an elite player, and that's not something that Markel Lee is. So this pick, I think they could have done better, but I don't think he fixes most of the problems that the Raiders have when it comes to their linebacker core. And I think there were other linebackers that could have filled that need at that spot that they decided to pass over. So I think that's going to haunt them a little bit, in my opinion. Then we come to the next pick, and this is the pick that I actually like a lot. This is one of my favorite picks that the Raiders made. Shalom Luani, defensive safety out of Wake Forest. The positives I can say is from a production standpoint. He scored 87.56 in terms of solo tackle market share, 88.88 in terms of interception market share, and 94.59 in terms of pass deflection market share. He is a very good free safety when it comes to being a ball hawk, getting turnovers, and making plays on the football. That's something that he does exceptionally well. He's able to find the ball and make plays on the ball. And overall production, he had 95.43 in terms of his overall production score, which is impressive. And as an athlete, he's not bad either. He scored 22.99 in terms of explosiveness, 66.84 in terms of speed for his size, and 78.43 in terms of flexibility for his size. He basically tested very similar to Budda Baker as an athlete. And this is actually him compared to Budda Baker. So you got a guy with almost similar, if not, you got a guy who's essentially similar as an athlete to Budda Baker, who has better production than Budda Baker against a conference that is the same, it's the same conference, dude. So Shalom Luani is a player I actually like. I don't necessarily think he's going to step in and become the starter because Carl Joseph is the starter, but Carl Joseph does have a light injury history, and I think that Shalom Luani, if Carl Joseph was to get injured, I think Luani is going to pay dividends at that spot for the Raiders. So I think he's a good pick in terms of future plans. If injuries happen to Carl Joseph for whatever reason, I think having Luani on the team is going to be a very good thing for us, for the Raiders when it comes to his overall profile. Then we come to the next pick, and this is my second favorite pick, or at least it might be my first favorite pick, actually, in Jalen Ware, offensive tackle out of Alabama State. In terms of athleticism, he scored 79.25 in terms of explosiveness, 95.47 in terms of speed, and 67.68 in terms of flexibility for his size. He's by far the most explosive athlete that the Raiders have taken under Reggie McKenzie's tenure, and I think he has a very good shot to be the opening day starting right tackle for the Raiders and eventually become the starting left tackle for the Raiders. That is just how good he is. Athleticism-wise, he's essentially a more explosive and more flexible version of Cam Robinson. And this is him compared to Cam Robinson, actually. And I think if you actually take a look at his film, you'll see some of the similar things in terms of being a very, very big, really good run blocker with very good explosiveness and very good flexibility. I think this is probably one of my favorite picks because if they give this guy an opportunity to become a starter, I think he'll run away with he'll run away with it. And we have such problems, man, at that spot. And David Sharp is not going to fix those issues, but I do think that Ware will actually fix those issues. So I like that pick a lot when it comes to Ware, and in terms of his athleticism and the potential that he has, and also film-wise, I think he's not too shabby either. Then we come to the running back pick of the Raiders, Elijah Hood, running back out of North Carolina. His big issue is just there isn't a ton of information about him. Production-wise, he scored 52.36 out of 100, which is only 3-time Pro Bowl level. Age-wise, 94.73 for age. And that's just not great. I mean, most running backs you want in that 70 or higher range when you're talking about special players. But at the very least, I think Hood has the production of a potential starter. The only thing he performed at the North Carolina's Pro Day was the speed score, and he only scored 64.49 in terms of his speed score. And when it comes to running backs, you want them, at least elite running backs, you want them to have at least one athleticism mark that is 79 or higher consistently. So whether it's speed, explosiveness, or flexibility, you want every single special running back since the 1999 NFL draft class had at least one athletic metric that was 79 or higher, and Elijah Hood fails to meet that mark. But is he going to replace what we're losing with Latavius Murray? The Raiders are going to lose. They already lost Latavius Murray, and I think when you look at Hood and you look at Murray, they have similar amounts of production. They're similar athletes. No, they're not. I mean, Latavius Murray is a much better athlete, but I do think that Hood has the profile of a guy that could actually become the running back for you guys. And basically, it's still going to be a committee system. You're still going to have two. You're going to have your power running back or your run heavy running back, and then your pass catching running back. But I do think that Hood kind of gives you the same sort of thing that you had with Latavius Murray. So I think that's exactly the role that you should expect with Hood. Of course, Marshawn Lynch is here, but I do think that Hood is a guy that could eventually develop into that kind of run-heavy, kind of committee back guy down the line, based on his age and based on his production, just based on the only speed score that he has. Then we get to the last pick of the draft, and Trayvon Hester, defensive tackle out of Toledo. He did not test at all during the process because he was injured, but this is the issues with him. Production-wise, it just wasn't great. 56.56 in terms of solo tackle market share, 44.75 in terms of sack market share, 67.83 in terms of tackle for loss market share. He only scored a 3.09 age score, which is really, really low. And the production for his schedule, again, this was at Toledo, he only scored a 31.95 when it came to his production adjusted for his schedule. That is not getting it done by any stretch of the imagination. So Trayvon Hester is essentially a guy that was kind of average productive against Toledo competition, MAC competition. That's just not good. That's just not getting it done. It's just, So I don't expect many things from Trayvon Hester at all, because he fails age, he fails production. He's basically going to be a camp body type of guy. That's the best case thing I see for him. But I just don't see very many positive things with him going forward because of all those other things. But bottom line, the Oakland Raiders draft class. Now, again, I don't like doing grades. I say this every single episode, but it just bears repeating. I don't like giving grades out because, again, I think grades are stupid because a lot of times grades are based on big boards and what your opinion was on a player and all that other kind of stuff. But I do like at least giving you the perspective of what could possibly happen with this draft class from a data perspective. From a data perspective, I would say the Raiders got at least 7 potential starters is what you got. I think Conley is a guy that has a good chance to be a long-term starter. Obi Melifonwu has a decent shot at being a long-term starter. Eddie Venados has a decent shot at being a long-term starter. David Sharp has the potential to be a long-term starter. Shalom Luani has a potential to be a long-term starter. Jalen Ware has the potential to be a long-term starter. And Elijah Hood has the potential to be a long-term starter. So that's actually 8, excuse me. But the issue is that you have no players that I see high-quality outcomes with. None of the players that I just mentioned have a very, very high likelihood of becoming a Pro Bowl player or a multiple All-Pro player. So Conley, chances of becoming a Pro Bowl player, very, very low because of his production. Obi Melifonwu's chances of being a very good player, very low because of his interception market share and his age. And Evanderdo's chances of being a special player are really, really low because of his overall production. Shalom Luani's chances of becoming a special player is because of age. Jalen Ware's chances of becoming a special player is mainly because of the he's an FCS guy, and plus he's a little older as a prospect. And again, later round guys have to get. I just don't like banking on late round guys becoming Pro Bowlers just because how tough it is. I mean, they have to win. They have to win the job and become a starter, and then do it. Hit it out of the park. So I don't like to make judgments like that on players. Elijah Hood doesn't meet Pro Bowl thresholds because he's not as productive, and also has no athleticism traits that he's shown thus far indicative of a special player. And that's just the bottom line. I think there's lots of starters in this class, but I don't think that this class really addresses some of the fundamental issues that the Raiders had in terms of offensive tackle. It does address some of them, but it doesn't address them in a way that they could have addressed it. I also don't think it really addressed the issues in terms of linebacker. And secondary-wise, I think there were other teams like the Dallas Cowboys and a few others that addressed their secondary in a much more dynamic way than the Raiders did. So, again, all around, I don't think it was a terrible draft. I think you're going to end up with some starters for the Raiders. But if you think that this is a class that's going to turn us into this perennial dynasty sort of team, I don't really see that. I think there's a lot of players that are going to contribute, a lot of guys that are going to be good, a lot of players that are just raw. They're going to need a lot of coaching and a lot of help from that perspective to really get up to speed and become really impactful players. But that's just kind of how I feel about this class. Tell me what you think in the comments below. You can follow me at Gymmetrics on Twitter. You can also check out my blog at draftcoburn.wordpress.com, where I post a few things, kind of data-related stuff as well on that blog. And you can keep watching videos here at the Common Man Football Show YouTube channel. Again, like and subscribe if you like this content. If you want more content like this, be sure to show me your love with the likes and the watching, and share the video too. If you have a Raider fan that doesn't really know how they did or how they performed, have him take a look at this. And again, this is the data-based view on things. There are hundreds of people that could do a better job of breaking down the film of these players, but I don't think that you'll have 100 people being able to break down the statistical potential either. So I'm going to stay in my lane and just do these videos, and hopefully people will enjoy them and catch on to them and all that kind of stuff. So again, thank you for listening to the Common Man Football YouTube channel. I'm signing off. Peace.